Okay, hi, my name is Bella Brown, and for my final in my data set, I did the impacts of Uber Eats and DoorDash. And I also kind of compared it to like self delivery and in store orders and why I am interested in like the background of my data. So I found this super interesting. I picked this data topic is because I think DoorDash and Uber Eats is a growing industry and it's so effective for college students in many ways. And I've never been like back at home when I was in high school, I heard of it but never really did it. But when I got to college, I feel like everyone around me, I'm always seeing DoorDashers drop stuff off in my Shore's lobby. And it's not just food, it's also like groceries or like a bouquet of flowers. But also, I feel like it can be effective in many ways. For example, like it opens up jobs because, like, if you have classes like 2 to 6 and you have 2 hours in between there and you don't know what to do with it, you can just hop in your car and it's really effective just to run around and go deliver food or groceries, whatever is needed. And it's very flexible because it's really hard to find a job in college where you only have flexibility hours for like one day and it's 2 hours. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be hard to find a boss that hires you for that amount of time. But so overall, I feel like DoorDash and Uber Eats has truly been really effective in a growing industry. And I'll get to that later on in some of my graphs. But now, kind of like the background and my limitations of my data set, I did get my data set from Kaggle, which is like the online source that we learned about in class. And then my limitations are it is based off of a different country's data set, so it was really hard to decipher. Like, there were certain restaurant names I've never heard of before, but it does, I would just have to filter it and clean it, but because it still, like, shows the same patterns, though, so I would filter the restaurant names to, like, what kind of food it was, if it was, like, burgers, pizza, sushi, Thai, like, whatever it might have been. So, it still showed the same patterns it would have, but it was a little bit harder to, like, go in and clean it a little bit and organize it to like what food type each of these restaurants were. So then my two topics are the impact of delivery platforms on food profitability and performance, and then my topic two is how delivery costs and orders affect restaurants' profit, or like how they affected the costs in a way. So these are my 6 questions, but I pulled 3 from topic 1 and 3 from topic 2. I'll read through them really quick, but they are going to be at the top of each of my slides. So for topic 1 is what percentage of total orders comes from DoorDash, Uber Eats, in-store, and self-delivery? And then for topic 1, question 2, which food type generates the highest total revenue across all delivery channels? And then question 3, what food category generates the highest average order value? And then for topic 2, my 3 questions, why does a large delivery radius lead to higher delivery cost or lower profit? And then for question 2, which food category relies the least on delivery platform and most in-store orders? And for question 3, which delivery platform generates the highest total of revenue overall? So for my first question for my topic 1, these are my Excel pivot tables. My first 2 questions kind of are related to my Excel. And it's what percentage of total orders comes from DoorDash, Uber Eats, in-store, and self-delivery. I can tell you right now that the leading one with the most orders is Uber Eats with 39.64%. And then the second one was actually DoorDash with 21.60%. And then the next one was self-delivery orders with 20.37%. And then the last one was in-store orders, which is 18.39%. Which I found this really interesting because right now with just orders from like DoorDash, Uber Eats, and all that, the 2 leading ones are Uber Eats and DoorDash. And I feel like that kind of just shows like what an impact in a growing, effective industry that these 2 apps do have. And so I'm not going to read off every single one of these percentages, but the highest food type for each one of these delivery categories is burgers. And I find that really interesting compared to my other graphs later on in this presentation. But the highest, it was for in-store, self-delivery, DoorDash, and Uber Eats. Burgers is the highest percentage. And it always averaged around 20%, 30%, 27%, and 21%. So always 20 to 30% of all total orders for each delivery category, which I thought was really cool. And then for this graph, it's which food category generates the highest average order value, which I also found this one really interesting because you would think it'd be burgers because like of all the higher order sales it does have and all the revenue burgers does have compared to other food categories, but it's actually chicken, which I found that pretty interesting too. And I think the second one was burgers. But yes, the burgers had 38.67, while chicken had 38.78. So it did have it by a beat by burgers just a little bit. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then the average order value is basically like the average price of each dish. So like if I were to DoorDash a chicken dish, like it would average probably more than a burger dish. And I would think they'd make higher profit or more money from chicken dishes than burger dishes because of like the average order value. But that's just not how it works, which I also thought was pretty interesting in a way. For topic 2, my 3 questions, and remember my topic 2 is about like the effects from like the delivery aspect of it. So this graph shows down here, it's like the distance and radius of each order for like DoorDash or Uber Eats, and then this is the cost. So as you see, as the distance gets further and the radius gets further, the cost goes up. So my question is, why does a larger delivery radius lead to a higher delivery cost or lower profit? So I feel like that's always kind of common sense, but you can actually see it through this graph, which I really like seeing that like visually. And when you do like more research in it, the reason why they have to higher prices, like different restaurants and Uber Eats and DoorDash, they have to higher the prices of different orders based on the distance, because you still have to like put in like the gas you're spending. So if you leave it at the same amount of price as like a shorter delivery would be, you would technically be losing money, not as much profit, because of the gas you have to spend. But yes. And then for my next question is, which food categories relies the least on delivery platforms and most in-store orders? And I also found this question really interesting because you also have to remember which food kind of does better boxed up and like which food gets soggy after a while. So like obviously like fries and like Texas toast, like stuff like that, like it gets more soggy left in boxes for a long time when it's like the delivery process of it. So when I kept that in the back of my mind, I was like looking at these bars, it kind of made sense because obviously like burgers, they have such a high delivery process, but they also have just amount of like a little bit lower of in-store. So here's burgers, and then you have in-store, which is up here, and it's just as equal with like Uber Eats, self-delivery, and obviously like Uber Eats is up here, DoorDash is down here, as well with like self-delivery. So even though Uber Eats does have a significant gain, it does still, like in-store does definitely like have an input and like a value still to burgers in a way. So whenever you look at the lower ones, and one of them was Thai, like even though Uber Eats and DoorDash still have like a huge impact, their indoor still is bigger and like has more of an impact, if that makes sense. So I would say Thai. And then also there's another one, and it is pizza also still has like a huge impact in store than self-delivery. But yes. And then my last graph for my question 3 is the highest total revenue between delivery options. And the highest one was Uber Eats revenue, which like we've seen through this whole presentation, like this whole data set. It's Uber Eats does take the cake for any of these graphs or revenue, profits, like anything you see. So I thought that was pretty interesting too. And the least amount of one was in-store revenue. And then the second one was DoorDash, self-delivery, and then in-store. But yeah. And then, so for my conclusion, overall, you can see like through my analysis and like my data set that Uber Eats and DoorDash does have a huge effective like impact and like a growing community. And you can also see that in the 10K too, of like how much it's growing in today's society. And you can also see that like just because there's like the average profit cost is higher doesn't mean it's overall has the highest revenue. And then same with like delivery aspect of it, just because it is farther doesn't mean it's going to be the same amount as a shorter distance order might be. And because also if you don't change the pricing of that, you will be losing money by that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for listening. And I have my sweet mates in here listening, and they're going to ask questions.
Have you personally ever used Uber Eats or DoorDash?
I have, just because the effectiveness of it, especially when I'm in college, it's hard to find time, or whenever you're trying to go in between classes, or when it's late at night and I don't have a snow car in Arkansas, I'll DoorDash something to Shore's lobby.
Do you usually use DoorDash or Uber Eats, or do you usually go in store?
I feel like normally I do use N-Store because it's so easy. Like when I'm driving home from work, I can so easily pick up something. But there has been times when like I had wanted to use DoorDash or Uber Eats. I do use DoorDash more than Uber Eats though, because it's just what I've been used to normally, like back at home, or like I've heard it more. And I have used it whenever I needed to, like for example my car is not a snow car, or like sometimes with me and my friends, none of us just want to drive and we want to DoorDash ice cream or like whatever we may need. I have done that before, but I do use N-Store more than me ordering online on DoorDash or Uber Eats. But yeah, thank you.